deserve such a fate. What befell them was not just persecution. What they experienced was so dark it could rot souls, so cold it could freeze ice. It is called the meat grinder, and millions of people fell victim to it. I am here not to tell you stories from an ancient era, but to recount what happened in the very heart of the Soviet Union, in the middle of Siberia, just a short time ago. The hell of the Gulag. The year was 1918. The conflict between Tsarist Russia and the Bolshevik insurgents had ended, and the Soviet Union, led by Vladimir Lenin and founded on socialist ideology, was finally established. However, maintaining order in this newly founded vast country was not easy. Consequently, under Lenin's orders, forced labor camps began to be established. These camps, commonly referred to as Gulag, were primarily intended to isolate and re-educate those who, in Lenin's words, were socially dangerous, subversive, suspicious, and disloyal elements whose ideas did not serve the new order. Additionally, they were meant to provide the labor force needed by the country. However, when Stalin came to power, especially between the 1930s and 1950s, the gulags became a terrifying system and turned into some of the most brutal labor camps in human history. During Stalin's era, the number of camps, which was a few dozen, expanded to 53 directorates and 423 labor colonies spread across the entire geography of the Soviet Union. Due to the fear that foreign spies would overthrow the regime in the country and Stalin's oppressive rule, it became very easy to end up in the Gulag labor camps. A small joke about any official, displaying a dissenting stance, or stealing a piece of bread out of hunger were sufficient reasons to spend a significant portion of your life in these camps. The definition of counter-revolutionary action in Article 58 of the Soviet Criminal Code, dated February 25, 1927, was the most frequently invoked law regarding political offenders. For instance, during the period known as the Great Terror, when drunken soldiers in Odessa told anti-Soviet jokes in a restaurant and the customers around them smiled sympathetically, it resulted in the arrest of each one of them. Between 15 and 18 million prisoners were forcibly laboring in these camps from 1918 until they were closed in 1957, and around 2 million of them died. If you fell into the Gulag camps, no one would pity you anymore. You would simply be told, "You are under arrest." Your door would be knocked on. Sometimes you would be taken to the camp after long journeys in the back of a car. Other times, the journey to the middle of Siberia would be made in cages inside a train. Reaching the camp would be completed with old transportation methods pulled by animals. Upon arrival at the camp or interrogation center, torture would begin even before the sentence was determined. For instance, in a method called on-off heating, cold and foul-smelling air would be alternated in the cell. In the mushroom room, the inside would be extremely heated. According to Vasily Alexandrov, they would heat these cells so much that blood would start oozing from the pores of the body. The guards would not remove the prisoner until they saw this blood. There were also those thrown into sewage pits in the dark, subjected to sound torture, and deprived of sleep. For someone physically exhausted, these practices were terrifying. No matter how bad the barracks were, they seemed like heaven compared to the cells. Prisoners locked in unheated cells in the cold of Siberia were also left without food for days. In such situations, you feel like you can't endure even an hour, but after days, you feel nothing at all. The Gulag labor camps were mostly established in remote areas of the country. Some camps were thousands of kilometers away from the nearest settlement, and in the cold of Siberia, the temperature could drop to 60 degrees Celsius. Prisoners were forced to work in areas such as timber production, mining, railroad construction, and munitions manufacturing. Among the incoming prisoners, common criminals, gangsters known as thieves-in-law, and dissidents labeled as enemies of the state were predominant. It didn't matter if the prisoners' crimes were proven. A denunciation or any suspicion was enough to be confined to these camps for 5 to 25 years. Age or gender didn't matter either. For example, children who had committed theft were sentenced to 10 to 25 years, and the possibility of a reduced sentence was eliminated due to the law on the prevention of juvenile delinquency, homelessness, and neglect, dated November 25, 1935. While women were initially placed in the same camps as men, they were isolated in later periods. Not only their bodies, but also their human dignity were destroyed. They were forbidden to carry photos of their loved ones. Indeed, in a report by a camp administrator, it was mentioned that in the camp's work regime, there were situations where a prisoner was given only 4 or 5 hours of rest out of 24 hours, which significantly reduced their productivity. Besides the working hours, food scarcity was another problem. By law, prisoners could receive a few meals a day based on their work performance and meeting their quotas. In 1938, during the Great Purge, the chief prosecutor of the Soviet Union, Andrei Vyshinsky, wrote a memorandum to the head of the Gulag, stating that among the prisoners, some were so ragged and lice-infested that they posed a health risk to the remaining ones. These prisoners had deteriorated to the point where they no longer resembled human beings. Former prisoner Varlam Shalamov described those days as follows. "I was ready to cry for fear that the soup would turn entirely into water. We ate it slowly, but if you had an empty stomach, even if the soup went in, you would feel incredible pain. We cried when we were hungry, but when we ate something, we cried again, because our stomachs hurt even more." However, very few camps were as dreadful as those in Vorkuta. Approximately a 80 kilometer north of the Arctic Circle, and 1,900 kilometers from Moscow, nearly 2 million prisoners passed through the region's coal mines. Around 200,000 of them died due to cold, disease, and hunger. In the Special Corrective Labor Camp No. 6 in Vorkuta, Trotskyist revolutionaries were imprisoned in 1936, and they started a mass strike. The prisoners participating in the strike, which lasted 132 days, demanded the separation of political prisoners from criminals, an 8-hour workday, the reinstatement of special meals for political prisoners, and food distribution independent of work performance. The Gulag administration's program announced that the demands of the prisoners striking in the Vorkuta mines would be met. The prisoners had won a victory, but shortly after the strike was won, the majority of the participants were executed. Those planning to escape from the camps in the remote regions of the Soviet Union would try to persuade weaker and newer prisoners to come with them to avoid starving to death. These individuals were called canned goods. Don't compare Siberia to anywhere else. Especially after the 1940s, those assigned to these camps understood not only what it meant to be arrested, but also to be ground up in the Gulag machinery. After Stalin's death in 1953, many changes occurred in the Soviet Union, and the Gulag labor camps were closed by 1957. However, the memories of millions of prisoners, the memories of what happened, and the fates of people carried the terror of these camps to the present day. These ruins, still standing today, serve as a haunting reminder of the immense suffering and tragedies endured by millions of innocent people. Each stone, each wall, each mark is a silent witness to the dark chapters of human history. Remembering these horrific events from the past is crucial to prevent similar tragedies in the future. The Gulag is not just a page from history. It is a lesson on the value of human dignity and freedom. If you liked the video, don't forget to hit like. Subscribe for more adventures and click the bell so you won't miss out. Quick, easy, and keeps the good times rolling. See you in the next video.